Hey, welcome back to Compliance Clips and thanks for watching. We're going to pick up where we left off with Bud Kneller from Frontline CVS, discussing the changes at the MTO arising from the Auditor General's report. If you got a CVOR, you want to find out what we're talking about.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
and
the
I
other
was going to,
piece to this is just
yep, no
so
good.
not only was, through COVID, obviously there was no enforcement happening. Number two, there was no hiring happening. And number three, there were people who were old like me leaving.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the perfect storm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So you're trying to respond to an Auditor General report and you have all these things happening. So finally, let's say by the end of 222, we can now start to get back to work, on a more quote unquote normal basis. So the hiring starts and the training starts and getting them out on the road starts. And you start backfilling all these people that, from CVOR analysts to
Right.
senior program advisor. I mean, it's
Yeah.
happening. It's happening at a tremendous rate, but we're just now starting to see the trickle effect of all those people getting put in place. I think over the next few years, that's why this, information is so important. I think that's really going to ramp up over the next couple of years, just
Mhm.
because of the number of staff that the ministry is going to be able to put in place to make these things happen that they just didn't have 2 years ago, plain and
Right.
simple.
Right.
So if I can just raise a question here related to what we're hearing, one of the things that's been a relatively hot potato item up north in the last 18 months, 2 years, has been the behaviors of some of the drivers on stretches of 11 and 17. Um, and what we've seen is a lot of overtaking on double yellow lines, leading to collisions or near misses, fatalities. There was a recent CBC News article on it where members of the municipal government were expressing their concerns, and locals were concerned about basically just driving home because of the behaviors of some of these drivers. Would it be safe to say that events that occur up there where a company may not otherwise be pushing any of the thresholds that result in fatals are going to be subject to additional scrutiny and possible interventions?
Doing, but they're
Yeah.
taking bodies from down here and they're putting them up north. And it's basically just, it's almost like when you're on a blitz. You're
Yeah.
not you're not being sent up north to give people warnings. Like when
Right.
you find vehicles that have, you know, concerning defects, you should be laying charges on top of that. And the whole purpose of that is, as you're saying, Rick, to make the MTO aware of companies that maybe have been flying under the radar
Mhm.
and just,
Mhm.
by the grace of God, haven't, killed
Yeah.
somebody or themselves in the process.
Well, I think you're correct when you mentioned earlier about, the MTO being short-staffed. We know that we've seen roadside inspection stations that haven't been open as frequently as they should have. So some of these bad characters are just flying on by. Whereas now this is going to give us another look, and I know all of us do this. We advise our clients, don't just rely on the overall violation rate. What is the activity? What are the trigger points? And now the MTO has now brought those points to light to say, we're now looking at this. So you need to pay attention as well.
I think speaking for a lot of us on our side of the industry, this is long overdue and is going to be welcome.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going to be. I think this is a long overdue initiative, and we need to get some of those carriers who have flagrantly been ignoring the rules
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well,
to appreciate the outcomes.
and I hope with this process, other provinces and the territories see what's happening as well and implement some processes as well. Because I know, we all deal with other provinces, and some of those provinces are just looking at the score, and that's the only thing that triggers any type of intervention. So we need to be looking at, oh my gosh, you had a fatality. Wow, let's get on you before you get to 35%. So, it's
But
trying to be proactive here.
there's one other way that they're trying to zero in on, and that is through the voluntary audit process.
Mm-hmm.
So again, there's a lot of these companies that are in more remote areas who
Right.
10 years ago failed an audit. Nobody seemed to care. So they just
Yeah.
said, I'm conditional, who cares? And they've
Yep.
gone along their way. Now insurance companies are going, we're
Yes.
not going to continue to
Yep.
insure you.
Yep.
So they
Correct. Yeah.
volunteer for an audit. Well,
Mm-hmm.
they're like a 10 truck operation, a
Yeah.
15 truck operation with low OVR. So there was two issues that the Auditor General found. One, there was way too much lag time between when these people were applying and when they were actually getting audited. So the ministry says, okay, we need to create a couple of other layers of audit so that we can move these companies from conditional to back to satisfactory. The problem with that was, so you had the, what we call the ASRA, the alternative safety rating assessment. So that's the one where basically they just get a bank of questions.
Right.
They have to answer, how do you monitor your vehicle maintenance, your driver's hours of service, and so forth. And then they've added another, which they call a tier 4, which is basically capturing a moment in time. So you don't qualify for the ASRA, but we don't really have concerns. You haven't had major events. We're not overly concerned. So we don't really want to do a full-blown audit on you. So what we're going to do is what they call, like I say, they're going to capture a moment in time. So they're going to do an interview with the client, like we're doing here, a team meeting. They're going to talk about their maintenance program. They could very well say, do you have, in fact, I know they will. They'll say, do you have a preventative maintenance statement? Yes. Show it to me. Like literally hold it up to the screen and show it to me.
Right.
How do you monitor your vehicles to ensure that they're being properly maintained, that defects are being repaired, so on and so forth. Then once that process is over, the auditor will select a moment in time, which will in all likelihood be an event from their CVOR record, and they'll go, okay, I need to see this driver's hours of service for the month of September, because that's the month the event took place. I want to see the maintenance records for this vehicle, because that's the vehicle he was driving when that event took place, and I want to see his DQ file.
Right.
And I'm going to open up a Dropbox, and I want you to scan all that information into it. And they're basically going to, that's basically, they might pick a collision on top of that, and just to see, what did you do? Was there any discipline? Do you have the police report? Do you have any processes in place when something like that happens? What have you done to try to prevent it, so forth? But that would pretty much be it.
Sure.
So that was kind of how it started. And then again, what they were finding was that too many of these people, were able to get through this audit without necessarily being a really good compliant company. So the additional layer that they've added to this process is if you have a tier 4 audit or even a full-blown tier 2 audit, and the audit, and you pass. I had a client who passed with flying colors, but the auditor came back and said, you did very well on the audit. I'm very happy with what you did, but there's still 2 areas that you have that concern me. So I would like you to provide me with, essentially, I call it an action plan that will make me feel like this is not going to be a problem moving forward. So I need you to put that together for me, send it back to me. I'm going to revisit it in 30 to 60 days to make sure you're actually doing what you said you were going to. And from what I'm being told, that's when the actual rating will change. So
that's a real difference from the prior audits. That's significant, right?
Yeah.
Like 55, 65 score criteria, where as long as you were above those and you didn't fall below in any one category, you passed and we left you alone.
Right.
Now it's like, oh no, there's 30% here that's not being addressed.
Yeah.
You need to tell us what you're going to do to fix it. That's a material change.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's all about, trying to close those holes where, people are just kind of flying under the radar, largely because of where they are, not because they have this magnificent program in place.
Yep. I recently helped a client out of the US obtain their CVOR. And it's very similar to what you were talking about, Bud. The MTO official or CVOR, whoever the person was, I wasn't involved directly. They wanted an action plan. They wanted to know, what is your process of hiring drivers to meet Canadian compliance or Ontario compliance? And what is your maintenance program? How does that work? How does that look? And it was really interesting because the client it's just a small client. I think they got 10, 12 trucks in the US. But they're really struggling with it because they got, really don't have any processes in place. What's the problem? I said, well, you got to have something. How do you hire your drivers? So let's talk about it. And they were able to verbalize it to me. I said, perfect. That's what they want to hear. Can we put it on a piece of paper?
Document it.
And then we can document it in the action plan. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's like, this isn't rocket science, but if you're missing areas, that's where the MTO is going to go. You need to strengthen that, because that's an area, like you say, an area for concern that we need to address this. So yeah. So
this is started and in place now, Bud, or
Yeah.
is there, okay, so carriers should be expecting heightened examination is what I'm hearing. Like they're going to be, if they have an accident and it gets passed on to someone down in St. Catharines and they look at the post-collision inspection and they see there's a history of the similar violations in their roadside inspections, St. Catharines might say, let's go dig into this one. Is that what we're hearing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So our carriers, if you're dancing around 33%, not that I see many of those, this should be your wake-up call for 2025.
Yeah. And the one I would add would be, we used to call it that they're living between 40 and 50.
Yeah.
So they've got the warning letter.
Got the warning letter.
Mm-hmm.
That's ancient history.
Mm-hmm.
But they haven't gone over 50, which would then,
Right.
trigger an audit. But they live in that 40 to 50 range. And now you
Right.
have a major incident. I can't guarantee nothing, but that's probably not going to bode well.
No, I can imagine. Yeah, you're gonna get a lot of attention very quickly.
So if you're in a warm bath, it's going to get boiling quickly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The heat's going to get turned up. Yeah.
Well, and it makes sense, because I'm sure the MTO doesn't want you living between the 40,
No.
50 range. They want you well below 35, and they don't want any spikes in your activity. And if you do get a spike, well, then, hey, they're going to bring it to your attention that we're aware of this. We're wondering what you're doing about it and how are you addressing it. And if you can provide evidence and proof to say this is how we're doing and this was the outcome of it, and you make MTO happy and satisfied, they're going to go, perfect, I'm good. And I'm assuming those notes would be on file so that if something were to happen later, they could go, this is what they did last time. Why don't we check again, see if they're still doing the same thing?
There are certain members of the legal profession that like carriers that dance in that warm zone, though, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Particularly south of the
Yes.
border.
Yeah.
But
Well,
that's a different conversation.
well, and I hate to say it, I'm going to bring it up anyway, because it's that, I don't even know what you want to call it, but there are some unscrupulous consultants out there
Right.
who are probably more than happy to help a client write up an action plan that is misrepresenting the carrier or providing something that would just help get you by for a quick so many bucks or whatever. Well, that's not going to work. I got to admit, I've had conversations with MTO folks in dealing with some action plans and the Azure. I've done some of those, and they're not silly. They can read between the lines. And if you're not giving them the information they want and the information that makes sense and is reflective of your activity on your profile, they're not going to accept it. And as you could say, Bud, it could escalate it to a higher audit process.
Yeah. And that's all part of this process is
Mm-hmm.
what we don't want is either a company with the wherewithal on their own to be able to just, tell us what we want to hear, or shell out a few $1,000s to a consultant so that they can put together what we want to hear. There's going to be follow-up.
Yes.
So on the audit, if they were helped by a consultant, let's get your paperwork in order. Let's do this. Let's do that, so that they can't close that loophole. They can't check that. They can't do that. Okay, then I'm going to have these conditions. You're not going to satisfactory till they're met.
Yep.
And I'm not, you tell me what you're going to do to fix it, and then I want to see it fixed, not just tell me what I want to hear. I want to see it.
Right.
And they actually have, I have it again in my slide deck for the presentations, but I believe it's a tier 3 audit that that can be used by the ministry, where the deputy register says, all I want you to do is go out and confirm that this guy's doing what he said he was going to do
Right.
6 months ago, 3 months ago,
Sure.
or whatever the case might be.
Sure.
Because it's
Cool.
not all, this company, for example, that we worked with regard to the major event. So they said all the things that they did and that they're going to do. The ministry could send somebody in there next month and go, show me
Yeah.
what you've done. Show me
Sure.
the changes you've made.
Exactly.
So that's part of that as well. The follow-up is a big part of that.
And imagine if you can't provide the evidence to what you said you were going to do, you can't prove the show me portion. That's really not going to go well with the auditor. He's just going to get,
Well, you're not going to get, you're not going to satisfactory, plain and simple.
No, exactly.
But
So
I
it's
mean, all of us here have worked with clients where we put together action plans, and it's been a client who's committed. And what do you see in 6 to 9 months? You see a continued high frequency of inspections, but a significantly lower frequency of citations and violations.
Right.
So I mean, it isn't rocket science. To your point, I mean, for the folks down at St. Catharines, they're going to continue to see the roadside inspections. If they don't see the behaviors and the violations and citations change, it's obvious you're not doing what you said.
Yeah,
so I mean,
exactly.
I think, Bud, to your point, if you do get that level 3, they go in. All they're really doing is trying to establish that you're not doing what you said you did, because it's not coming to fruition.
Yeah,
right.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Right. I mean, anyway, this has been great. I don't want to cut us all short, but I think we've got more than enough information here. This has been fantastic, Bud. Thanks so much.
Yes,
this is definitely going to be a 2-parter. Looking forward to having you speak at the Central Chapter in January, because people will be watching this after that date. We'll just kind of say, if you're interested in that, reach out to either John or myself or Bud at Frontline for information on how we can assist you if you're dancing near 35. And we'll be happy to do everything we can to help. What do you think, John?
Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you very much, Bud. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
Cool. All right.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. We hope you found today's materials to be useful and you can put them to work. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. And if you've got questions from today's material, or maybe you're just looking to improve your safety and compliance game, please feel free to reach out to either me or John. And remember, you can't manage what you don't monitor. The key to compliant profitability is just one phone call away. So until next time, put the phone down while you drive and keep your eyes on the prize.